Good morning, brothers and sisters, and welcome to National Family Service. My name is Brianna Schneider, and I'll be your host today. I'd like to welcome you to our international community, whether you are joining us for the first time or your 50th. It's so lovely to have you here with us. This community was founded by Father and Mother Moon, whom we affectionately call our true parents. Their vision is to bring the world together as one family under God through the philosophy of living for the sake of others and the blessing of marriages. If that sounds interesting and you'd like to learn more, you can type #connect in the Facebook chat or visit nationalfamilyservice.org. And with that, let's kick it off with our opening song.
For our opening song today, let's go to Clifton, New Jersey for Hiroki Ijichi's performance of the song, The Lord Has Come.
主は来たる主は来たるいずる東の光るこの地に民を治め身胸広めて父の右にて我が主来たるこの地すべて主は大きい踊り歌うよハレルヤハレルヤハレルヤアーメン主は来たる主は来たる白い御国の穴のこの地に罪をしのけ御国となし神の御胸で炎来たるこの地すべて主は大きい踊り歌うよハレルヤハレルヤハレルヤアーメン主は来たる主は来たる山も水も宝を一に幸となし誉れたたえ父の代わりに救世主来たるこの地すべて主は大きい踊り歌うよハレルヤハレルヤハレルヤアーメン
Thank you, Hiroki Ijichi, for that opening song. Now let's join Eric White for our opening prayer.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, our Heavenly Parent. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to come together as brothers and sisters, to gather here online from people all over the nation and all over the world. I really pray that we can truly listen with our hearts and our minds and that we can really invest in what Brother Naukimi is going to give to us at this Sunday service. But I pray that we can not only listen with our ears, but that we can listen with our hearts, and we can really apply the lessons that we're going to learn today into our everyday lives. We want to become better people. We want to live better lives and love deeper. And so I pray that we can really build real relationships with the people around us by investing in this Sunday service. I pray that we can really be here with you today, and that you can be here with us, and that you can really help us grow and become better people. Thank you so much. We're so eternally grateful for everything that you continue to do for us. And we really pray that you can, again, be here with us today and help us grow. So thank you so much. And I report all these things in my name, Eric White. Blessings for family. Amen.
Now let's head over to Kodiak, Alaska to hear two guitars and a couch sing the song, Love Can Build a Bridge.
Gladly walk across the desert with no shoes upon my feet, to share with you the last bite of bread I had to eat. I would swim off to save you in your sea of broken dreams. When all your hopes are sinking, let me show you what love means. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? I whisper love so loudly that every heart could understand. Love and only love could join the tribes of man. I would give my heart's desire so that you might see. The first step is to realize that it all begins with you and me. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you
Thank you so much for that wonderful opening prayer and beautiful performances from 2 guitars and a couch and 9 beautiful voices from one face. And thank you, brothers and sisters, for your great comments and joining us from around the world. It's so wonderful to have you here as part of this service. And now it's my pleasure to welcome our Family Federation President in America, Naokimi Ushiroda, for the main message today. Welcome, President Naokimi.
All right, thank you, Brianna, and good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. It's already been a month in 2022. Time flies very quickly. I hope you had a chance to start your New Year's resolutions. I've been pretty consistent with my daily exercise so far. I don't see the results yet, unfortunately, but I know that it's consistency that matters. Last week, we talked about the first false love triangle, where due to the feeling of lack of love, the archangel Lucifer left his position as a servant of God and ended up seducing Eve to gain dominion over her. And then Eve then seduced Adam, and they both inherited and passed on false love throughout the generations. So there was a false love triangle between the Lucifer, Adam, and Eve, when the original plan was for it to be the original triangle of love, or original love, which was between God, Adam, and Eve. So the question that occurred was, how could something like that happen? Why would God design such a flawed situation where there was even the possibility for this tragedy of false love to permeate throughout human history? So today, I wanted to explore the answer to that question by sharing about the power of love and the power of principle. How God created love to be more powerful than principle, and why. So let's start with the power and limitations of principle. Let's read. Human beings are created through the principle, and they are meant to live according to the way of the principle. The force inherent in the principle guides their growth in the proper direction. So it says here that the force inherent in the principle is what guides our growth towards a proper direction. This includes all the things that we covered in the principles of creation, where we learned about the dual nature of God and in everything. We also learned about the power of give and take action and the purpose with which we were created. So all those things are part of this principle, or these universal laws that help guide us naturally towards goodness. And knowing these principles can be quite useful. So the more that we study them, the more that we're aware of them, the more we can intentionally live according to those universal laws. Let's continue to read. Although God created human beings based on the principle, he governs us through love. Accordingly, in order for love to fulfill its proper role, its power must be stronger than the power of the principle. If the power of love were weaker than the power of the principle, God could not govern human beings through love. Rather, we would pursue the principle more than the love of God. So the principle is explained to us that God created us based on these principles, but chose to govern us through love. In other words, God created love to be stronger than the principle. Why? Because God didn't want our relationship to be just based on law and order. Otherwise, it would be a very organized but cold world. Maybe a good analogy would be like the military or boarding school. Things are very strict and orderly, but it wouldn't be kind of a loving atmosphere. So God created these laws of the universe to organize it, make things clear, but he wanted to have a relationship with us through love, not just based on order. Let's continue to read. In their immature state, Adam and Eve could not be directly governed by God through love. God foresaw that if they ever formed a common base with the archangel, there was a possibility that they could succumb to the power of deviant, unprincipled love and fall. To prevent this, God gave Adam and Eve the commandment that forbade them from relating with the archangel in this way. So according to the principle, God knew that there was a risk for Adam and Eve to be tempted in this immature state. That's why God gave the commandment very clearly, thou shalt not eat, else you shall surely die. He said that to make sure that they wouldn't make this grave mistake. You know, growing up, learning the principle, I actually learned the principle. I mean, I guess I grew up with it, but I learned it more specifically in middle and high school. That's when I went more deeply into it. And I felt that it really protected me from premature love relationships. I did have a crush in 7th grade. It was a long crush. It was like 6 years long, all through middle and high school. She was really cute, bubbly, smart. I think I actually decided to study German just to be in the same class with her. Guten Tag, ich habe Deutsch 4 Jahre in Hochschule gestudiert. Anyway, I didn't act on my feelings because I knew I was in a premature state. Actually, probably just too scared to do anything. But either way, it was very helpful to have these basic guidelines of understanding principle to prevent me from making some premature mistakes. Also, I remember in 8th grade, I joined my high school's cross-country team. And as you might guess, most of the chatter in the locker room was about girls and relationships. And there's a lot of drama. You know, sometimes they're talking about who slept with who, and there was a little bit of fighting over, the same girl and things like that. I just remember one guy. I was in 9th grade. He was a sophomore. He was a really sincere guy, but he was really heartbroken over a broken relationship. And right around that time, I had written an article for the school newspaper where I shared about the marriage blessing and also the importance of commitment as a prerequisite for a lasting love relationship. Surprisingly, that same day, my coach, he publicly complimented me on the article in front of the whole cross-country team. And this brother, although he was 1 year my senior, he started asking me for relationship advice. Anyway, I just felt like understanding these principles really provided valuable guidance towards goodness and protected me from the lack of love feelings that come, and again, the temptation towards premature relationships. Okay, now that we talked about the power and limitation of principle, let's talk about the power and danger of love. Let's read. The force which is stronger than the force of the principle is none other than the power of love. While human beings are in the state of immaturity, it is possible that the power of unprincipled love can induce them to fall. So, very simple but clear point, the power of love is more powerful than the power of principle. And particularly in a state of immaturity, where we haven't fully matured our love, then there's always a possibility to fall. Let's continue. Tragically, Adam and Eve did not obey the commandment, but formed a common base with the archangel and had give and take with him. Hence, the power of illicit love pushed them off the track. We can see in the story of Adam and Eve that even with the principle and God's commandment, the power of illicit love pushed them off track. That's really important to remember, that even if you know the principle and you understand God's commandment, you are not immune to fallen premature love. So what can we do? Is there any way we can avoid this premature false love? Let's read. No matter how powerful the unprincipled love of the archangel might be, had Adam and Eve adhered to God's commandment, forming a common base with God and engaging in give and take with him and no other, the power of the archangel's unprincipled love would not have affected them, and they would never have fallen. So the key here was maintaining give and take with God instead of the archangel. By having regular interaction with God and God's word, instead of engaging in fallen culture, that's what can protect you. In one sense, there's an old adage that whatever you put energy into, whatever you think of, that's what grows. So naturally, if you're engaging with God's word, if you're thinking about goodness, then that's what gets stronger. But if you're engaging in fallen culture, in pornography, and in things that you know are not true and good, then that's the energy that's going to grow within you. So really the key was, even if the temptation came, if Adam and Eve had simply understanding the principle and the commandment and had more give and take with God, then they would have not made this grave mistake. Of course, hindsight is 2020. So it's easy to kind of point out what went wrong, but when you're facing it yourself, it's really not easy to overcome that kind of challenge. Just to share an example, I might have shared this before, but I remember the biggest challenge for me related to this topic was in college. You know, the principle and the understanding God's commandment really helped me get through high school. But college was a totally different story, because in college, I wasn't living with my parents. I was in the dormitory. There's no kind of real rules and regulations. I remember in my freshman dormitory, there was co-ed bathrooms and co-ed showers. And yeah, it's just like people are just walking around the hallways in pajamas. It's a very kind of unstructured space. In any case, so I remember, anyway, long story short, there was, I did have a crush on a girl, and she was in my Japanese class, I guess. Yeah, it was my Japanese class. Why am I taking Japanese class? Good question. I was trying to get good grades for transferring to my the business school, to be honest. But anyway, the challenge with that was that, you know, when there was an attraction, I was trained to kind of just put it out there and be clear. You know, I'm kind of preparing myself for marriage, and that's not something I'm interested in right now. But that got her more curious. And even though I told her, you know, my faith background and the traditions of the marriage blessing, that didn't prevent her from kind of engaging. Anyway, she got to a point where she was interested enough that she would invite me to have a meal with her parents, and so on and so forth. So it was getting to a point where I really had to decide what I wanted to do. It's one thing to understand the principle and kind of go this way of life based on your knowledge, but it's a totally different thing to apply it fully in your life. Interestingly, at that time, my friend invited me to a one-year missionary program called STF, or Special Task Force. And I really reflected and I prayed about it. I asked God, what should I do? Should I go with this relationship, or should I not? This was a very difficult choice, but in the end, I really felt that I needed to make a clear decision in my life, and not just based on my knowledge of the principle, but based on my personal understanding and relationship with God. So I decided to, after my first year of college, I went to the 1-year missionary training. And there I had a lot of time to develop a more personal relationship with God, and strengthen my faith. In one sense, I was really strengthening that, having more give and take with God, and strengthening my foundation of faith. So that led to a second year, and then also that led naturally to getting blessed in marriage. And the rest, as they say, is history. So just want to share that because it's one thing to know it in your head, but it's a totally different thing to actually experience the real draw of love and relationships, especially when you're in that age, high school, college age. Okay, now that we talked about the power and limitations of principle, as well as the power and danger of love, I'd like to go into the super powerful combination of principle and love, or principled love. Let's read. Was God's commandment not to eat of the fruit binding forever? God's second blessing was to be fulfilled when Adam and Eve entered God's direct dominion of love by joining as true husband and wife and bearing and raising children in God's love. Indeed, the principle mandates that human beings eat of the fruit once they reach full maturity of character. The commandment not to eat or not to have sex was only temporary. If Adam and Eve overcame this kind of premature desire for love and obeyed God's commandment until they fully matured, then God would have blessed them in marriage, said, now you guys are ready. I will allow you now to, you have unlocked the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And basically with God's blessing, they could have engaged in loving each other as husband and wife. That was God's plan. So sex itself is not evil. The problem is if it's done prematurely, self-centeredly, and based on physical attraction, then it can be quite destructive. It really stunts your spiritual growth when you engage in premature sexual activity. And interestingly enough, it tends to turn you away from God and God's original love. I think it's because sex is a very powerful experience. And so if you connect sexual activity with selfishness, then it naturally leads you away from God. Whereas if you start engaging in sexual activity together with a sense of selflessness, sense of purpose, and with God's blessing, then that sexual experience can actually guide you and lead you towards God. So by engaging in this false love, Adam and Eve pretty much chose to turn away from God's love, and that's what has continued throughout history until now. But what would have happened if Adam and Eve chose to obey God's commandment until full maturity? Let's read. It was not only to prevent their fall that God gave immature human beings the commandment. God also wanted them to enjoy dominion over the natural world, including the angels, by inheriting his creative nature. In order to inherit this creatorship, human beings should perfect themselves through their faith in the word as their own portion of responsibility. So if they had obeyed God's commandment, Adam and Eve would have matured to have authority of love over all of the natural world, including angels. In fact, as children of God, they would have inherited this power of co-creatorship, and based on God's love, been able to not only rule over creation, but be able to co-create things together with God. In one sense, it's like this. It's like learning an instrument, right? When you first learn an instrument, you need to follow all the rules, regulations, practice, you're studying other people's pieces and so on and so forth. But when you reach true mastery, you're able to fully express your creativity, and you can even create original pieces. Another analogy that might help is like driving a car. You have to study, learn, practice, and do all these things in order to get a license to be able to drive a car. In that sense, God wanted to give us the key to true love, but we needed to mature ourselves and earn the license to love first. Then God would have freely and with confidence been able to give that key to love, which is basically his blessing to engage in that love relationship between husband and wife. All right, so let's read the final passage. Had Adam and Eve reached perfection, become a godly husband and wife, and experience God's direct governance by the absolute power of his love, their conjugal love would have been absolute. No person, no power in the universe could ever break that bond of love. Principle without love is cold, but love without principle is dangerous. That's why you need both. If you have both love and principle, it's a truly powerful combination. And that's how we can unlock this power of true love, which is unbreakable. In one sense, God took a risk with love. He knew that the power of love was more powerful than the power of principle, because that's how he designed it to be. But he wanted Adam and Eve to earn their right as lords of creation by overcoming this temptation on their own accord, by listening to God's commandment, and learn this discipline as a foundation to truly love. So that even though they're feeling attractive, feeling tempted, they control it. They say, you know what? Now, right now, God told me not to. I'm going to really focus on growing myself as a mature individual. If they had done that, then they would have earned the right or got the license to really love truly. And although they failed in their initial attempt, God is longing for the day when all his children, including us, break through in this realm of true love and experience true joy together with God. So in summary, number one, love is more powerful than the principle. Second, the principle and having give and take with God is key to overcoming the temptation of premature love. I'm going to repeat this one. This is so important. Understanding the principle and having give and take with God is key to overcoming the temptation of premature love. And three, a balance of love and principle is what leads to true love, the most powerful force. I just want to add one more thing about this third part, because although right now I'm emphasizing principle as a prerequisite and foundation for true love, I want to also say that too much principle without love also doesn't work so well, right? So even in our family, especially for the next generation who grew up in this community, if you just go by principle because this is the right thing to do, this is a law, then it also becomes very dry and cold. So it's really important for those who have studied the principle that you don't just limit it to principle as a prerequisite to love, but really that you have a balance of both principle and love. So that it's not just based on rules and law and order and what's right to do, but that you're also tapping into and balancing it with God's love, God's unconditional love, with forgiveness, grace, all those things. And with both principle and love, that's how you access true love. So in conclusion, let's not repeat the failures of the past and strive to have a healthy balance of love and principle in all of our relationships. God is longing for the day when all of his children can experience this true love. So with this knowledge, we can play an active role in working towards true love and modeling it in our own lives, in our families, and in our communities. May God bless you and your family this week.
Thank you so much, President Naokimi, for your message today. And if you like today's message, please share it with your friends. Now let's take a moment to reflect on this question. Which of my relationships could use more principle and which needs more love? Let's hear some live reflections today. It's my pleasure to invite Dale and Joy Garrett and Michelle Bea to share some thoughts with us. Welcome. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being here to share today. I'd like to start with Dale and Joy. As you were receiving today's message, what came up for you?
Well, I had an experience after the blessing. I was at the Unification Theological Seminary and I got a crush on one of the students. I never told her that I had a crush, but it was something that was really came up in my life. So I knew that it was wrong, of course, and the principal teaching was very helpful, but I talked to my wife and I shared what had happened, and she was very understanding and she didn't judge me, and we really worked it out together. And since that time, I never had any question on anyone except on my wife. So going along with what President Naokimi said, I was following the principle. I was praying to God desperately and upholding the principle, but the power of love with my wife was able to really help me to completely overcome this crush. And since then, it's been nothing but great.
And how about for you, Joy?
Thank you. I think President Naokimi's message about the balance of love and principle is a very powerful lesson. I first understood that the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden with the apple was real when in college, someone offered me a pill, a mind-expanding drug. And in that moment, I suddenly realized that that apple on the tree in the garden was no apple, it was a symbol. And then when I first heard this part of the principle, I invited a college friend to listen to it with me. And after this part of the principle, she started crying and crying and crying because she had been seduced by a college professor. So I realized that these aren't stories, these aren't myths, it's real life. In my own life, as a happily blessed person, temptations don't go away as we go to our workplaces, our schools, our businesses. We come across a lot of attractive people. So the late Billy Graham said that he never got in an elevator alone with a woman because he knew that people, could make up stories. And my husband and me follow that policy. As former teachers, we always had our door open if we consulted with a colleague or a student, because it's in those hidden places where sometimes love can overtake our principles. So we've had a lifelong process of keep the doors open when you're meeting privately with someone. So the kind of temptation that comes simply is dissipated, because we all meet really attractive people in our lives. So that's just something that keeping the door open in real life has kept our marriage strong from any type of unexpected temptation. So that was something I was thinking about as Naokimi gave this sermon.
Yeah, I think that in itself is a really wonderful metaphor to follow. Keeping the door open, just being really open, and when it comes to temptation, but also just an open heart. So thank you for that. And yeah. So next, I'd like to go to Michelle. What came up for you?
Yes, thank you so much. From a younger perspective, I really like how President Naokimi touched upon kind of his stories, because I think we see it just so often. And even I had experienced it as well, growing up through high school, having crushes, because all of my friends are getting boyfriends. And, a lot of times on TV, you see these relationships, these kind of made up relationships, and they glamorize it and make it look so great. So growing up, I had wanted that as well. But then I think at some point I realized, only trying to receive love from others was actually much more detrimental to myself than I believed it to be. I thought that, in a relationship, you have to give me something so that I can give you something. But really, it's that I should be willing to give you love and be mature enough to have a large capacity to give you that love. But of course, as we are growing, we have to reach that state of maturity and really continue to have a deep relationship with God before we're married. And I found that oftentimes, like when I was not practicing my faith well enough, I wasn't serving, I wasn't reading God's words, is when I felt the most vulnerable, the most weak for temptation and for Satan to come into my life and to tempt me in one way. And it would always work because I wasn't practicing my faith and I wasn't continuously having this give and take interaction with God. But once I started doing that more and more, I found that it was much more easier to deal with those temptations and those sexual desires. And even, now I live in the CARP Center here in Dallas, which is our youth ministry that's really centered on principle. Brothers and sisters living together, still I need to be strict with myself and continuously be in prayer, continuously read God's word in order to have healthy brother and sister relationships. So I like to remind myself that, no matter how much I know of God's words, no matter how much divine principle I know, that I still need to recognize that unprincipled love can be even stronger than your understanding of principles. So I need to remember that and remember that I'm not as strong as I think I am, and always lean back on God whenever I feel that I need to. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. That was, really well put. I like how you said, unprincipled love can be even stronger than the principle. And I think, that really goes back to having an understanding of both the principle and how love comes into it. So thank you all so much for your sharings. I think you've all demonstrated, that you can theoretically understand something, understand the principle, but to really live by it, you need to also have the love, whether it's for God or for your values or for your spouse. So thank you all for sharing that today. I really appreciate it. with that, we're going to move to the challenge of the week. So this week, the challenge is report to your pastor, spiritual mentor, or spouse about any relationship that are out of balance and seek advice. So work on that this week, and hopefully you can take some of the guidance from these reflections. I think they did a good job of showing how to do that. And I'd also like to mention, if you would like to participate in the service by prayer or live reflections, please contact your local pastor. And if you'd like to contribute a musical offering, you can email music@nationalfamilyservice.org. And now let's go to our closing prayer.
Now let's join Glenda Lambert for our closing prayer.
Thank you so much. And so let's do our closing prayer. Our most and loving Heavenly Parents, thank you so much for the beautiful message we received, the stories being shared about the power of love and the power of principle. If it wasn't for these two people, our true parents, or Father Moon and Mother Moon, who received this incredible revelation, Father, to really make it very clear to us how we can grow in love and also how we can grow in the principle. Our President Akumi said it so well. The balance of the power of love and the balance of the power of principle will lead us to the power of true love. And we're so grateful to receive this. I really pray, Father, that you can be with everybody today and this week, that they can deeply reflect what they received and they can apply that in their life. Please support and guide them. And all this want to pray this beautiful prayer with our effort and love in the name of all our blessed families and all families in the world. Amen.
For our closing song, let's go to Elizabeth and Nutley, New Jersey for our virtual collaboration of the song Humble and Kind, performed by Daryl Franklin and Peter Lewis.
There's a light that glows by the front door. Don't forget the keys under the mat. When childhood starts shining, always stay humble and kind. Go to church 'cause your mama says to. Visit grandpa every chance that you can. It won't be wasted time. Always stay humble and kind. Open the door, say please, say thank you. Don't steal, don't cheat, and don't lie. I know you got mountains to climb, but always stay humble and kind. The dream you're dreaming come to you. When the work you put in is real life, let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind. Don't expect a free ride from no one. Don't want to go to a ship and is wide. This keeps you from flying. Always stay humble and kind. Know the difference between sleeping with someone and sleeping with someone you love. I love you and over the line, so always stay humble and kind. Hold the door, say please, say thank you. Don't steal, don't cheat, and don't lie. I know you got mountains to climb, that summer sunshine. Always stay humble and kind. Don't take for granted the love this life gives you. When you get where you're going, you get turned back around. Let the next one in line will always stay humble and kind.
Thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed what you saw and want to support this ministry, you can go to nationalfamilyservice.org and click Give, or type #donate in the Facebook chat. And if you gained something meaningful today, please share this link to the sermon with your friends, neighbors, coworkers, family, or share the message with them in some way. Have a great week, and we'll see you here next Sunday at National Family Service. And as always, God bless you.
Sound